Make sure. Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Azorahype here on Sunday. I know we have our usual Game of Thrones speculation Sundays a little bit earlier, but I'm here in California enjoying Worldcon and, of course, George R. R. Martin in the flesh. And today we're going to have a really fun stream. We're going to have Aziz from History of Westeros. He's going to come on at some point. We're going to discuss a little bit about Worldcon and George R. R. Martin. And we're going to talk a little bit about some cool things that happened over the weekend. The reason why we were here to get some interact with George and get Song of Ice and Fire books signed. You can see that right there. We're going to do a little giveaway after, or talk about a giveaway, and get into some of the stuff that George kind of talked about on Tuesday, and go with that. So let's see who's in the chat here today. We have Mackenzie Burns, another fellow Canadian. What's going on, Mackenzie? We have Rayanne Callender. Nice to see you, Rayanne. We have J.R. Rowley, who we got to chill out with at Con of Thrones. Welcome. Sherry McLean. We have Ochella Angel, Mia Ice and Fire, and I'm sure we will have more of the shenanigans peeps, the memes peeps after. But let's go into a discussion about Worldcon and kind of what's been going on. We can open up some questions as well. If you do have questions about what George spoke about specifically on his different panels and whatnot, and we'll kind of keep it open so we can have some fun interactions. Misty says, Azorahype, remember to live tweet the Hugo winners. Yeah, I think I can probably manage that. That shouldn't be, I think. Yeah, I think we should have a signal. It shouldn't be too bad. Definitely going to the Hugos tonight. That's going to be really fun. James from Wales says, Kyle, I bet you love the book signing. Actually, 2 different book signings. I went on Friday and today, and I got a little announcement for later in the stream for something that's going to be really fun. I got an idea. I kind of want to ask all of you what you thought of the idea before we really move forward with it, but I do got a special piece of something to give away to the Azorahype community here in the YouTube Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones community. Sherry, and there's suggestions in the chat. I haven't actually taken an extensive look at who is nominated this year for most of these awards, but I'm very interested to see get to see John Picasso. Going to be interviewing him tomorrow. He's going to be, I think he's actually emceeing Aziz on the mic. I think he is. Yeah, let me look that up. Yeah, I think John Picasso is going to be emceeing the Hugo Awards. He did say he was going to be part of it in some way. And tomorrow we're actually going to interview him and talk a little bit about his work with X-Men and working with George R. R. Martin on the Song of Ice and Fire calendar and some of the other arts. That'll be really fun. We got Chrissy of Oldstone in the chat. She says, hello, my people. And I think Chrissy means hello, fellow Song of Ice and Fire nerds. Yes, John Picasso. Yeah, John Picasso will be in emceeing the Hugo Awards tonight. He actually did a really good job on Tuesday, Aziz. Yeah, he did. He asked some of the more difficult questions, I think, and got those out of the way pretty early. And then from then on, really, George was in a really good mood, I think, overall. But when it came to the Redwood City event, he was energized and pretty excited to be there. So that was really encouraging. Let's see what else we have in the chat here. Lucifer means Lightbringer. Oh, very cool. So David did notify you guys that I would be going live. Thanks, David, for the retweet and sending your crew over. We actually got to hang out with David last night. Believe it or not, we got to chill out with George R. R. Martin a little bit last night. George R. R. Martin was at the same party that we were at, everyone, last night. I got to meet him, had a very brief conversation, but George had asked if this was, so this is actually me meeting George R. R. Martin last night, everyone, just so we're clear, not my George, but met George R. R. Martin last night at the Brotherhood Without Banners party, the original Brotherhood Without Banners. Really, really cool people, so generously and included us into the weekend. So that was really, really awesome. And yeah, George dropped by. I think it was like for 10 or 15 minutes, Aziz. Yeah, maybe a little more, maybe like a half hour or so. Yeah. Held court for a bit. Yeah, it was pretty loud in there. So George R. R. Martin was at the party last night, and I got to chat with him. He asked me if it was my first Worldcon. I said yes. It was my first ever Worldcon, And he asked me where I was from. I said Canada. I said, well, I hope you come back to California. And you damn straight I'm coming back to California. The weather's been perfect. The food's been great. Obviously, meeting more of you from the community, which has been, obviously another huge plus of this trip. So I would say we partied with George R. R. Martin, but George was there in our presence last night, and that was really cool. So we got Scott McCloy in the chat. So you met the real three-eyed crow. Yeah, George. I guess George could be classified as the omnipotent one of the story. It is his story. Yeah, Robar. That's what happened last night. It was pretty cool. Mackenzie says, Kyle, I just uploaded a Dario and John comparison with their relationships to Daenerys using show evidence plus an idea for the future. Yeah, Mackenzie, we gotta get you on at some point. You guys do. I love how you guys go through the chapters on the Thursday night. I know you've appeared on Jen's channel a few times, but we'll get you on the podcast with me and Gemma if you're ever interested, and we can chat about this particular theory that you have if you'd like. Rayanne says, Kyle, I'm not used to seeing your home space in the board of Hype. Yeah, the wall of Hype. That's have it in the background. You guys know, like when you guys make donations, or I see a really funny meme or comment in the chat, I usually put people up as these. But yeah, no wall of Hype. This is just a regular white wall. Hey, and I don't think that George would appreciate me drawing on his beautiful walls of his apartment here. Oh, Aziz is getting some stuff for the backdrop. Here we go, everyone. Aziz, there's an Aziz sighting. He's going to at least put one helmet up. What else can we grab? I can't even see it.
Oh, can't even see it. You have to put it on then.
I'm not putting it on.
Okay, I got one break.
But there's all sorts of cool stuff in the back. There's actually a Porg in an X-Wing, which is oh, damn.
That you put on.
There we go, everyone. How do is it right here?
There you go. Yeah, that's good.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Show some love for your Hype King. Are you not entertained? Aziz found a crown. I blame it on him. The shenanigans will ensue, apparently. This is not a professional stream anymore. But yeah, so George was there last night. Like I said, got to have a brief conversation with him. And then I went back to get another, there's a couple of people that I got signed a copy of Game of Thrones for. I'm not going to mention them, but they have been, actually, you know what? I probably should. I'm just going to mention them. They're awesome people in the community. Maura Lee and Karen Richmond are each getting a signed copy of Game of Thrones. They have been such an integral part of the community, and obviously have been very, very generous to the GoFundMe. So I'm not even getting a copy of my own Game of Thrones signed by George. This is all going out to one copy for Maura Lee, one copy for Karen Richmond, and everyone. I'm actually going to be doing a giveaway, and I kind of want you guys to have some ideas about it. But I'm thinking about accepting best theory for Game of Thrones Season 8. If you send all of your theories into azorahypemedia at Gmail, I'll pick out the best one. I'll let it run for about a month or something so we can get as many entries in as possible for some sweet theories. But I'm going to give away a signed copy. I'm going to show you just so you guys can see it's authentic of the paperback Game of Thrones, everyone. Got an extra copy today and wanted to do something cool for you guys. So I'll probably have some more details tomorrow, have it all set up. But if you do want to enter the contest for the giveaway for the Game of Thrones signed copy by George R. R. Martin, just email me at azorahypemedia. You guys know that's the work email. You guys send me your best theories and we'll kind of go from there. Yeah, Aziz. Let's get Aziz in here. Let's get Aziz. We got Aziz from History of Westeros in here. Everyone, cheers. Here,
what's up, everybody?
Trying to take a look at the chat and everything. Aziz, like, what are some of the things that you've noticed from Worldcon that have really inspired you as far as like, you know, the George talk and just being at the first ever Worldcon for yourself?
Yeah, well, that's a good part of it right there. Just the first Worldcon, coming out to California, and of course we got to do some fun stuff before we started the con. So, just went into the con feeling really well, feeling really positive, feeling really upbeat in general. But even if I hadn't been, the con would have gotten me going because it has been a lot of fun. There's a lot of old school people at Worldcon, and I don't mean that's not a negative thing. That's a good thing because you got people that have seen a lot of the history of sci-fi and fantasy, people who have a lot of experience in different fandoms, and there's a lot you can learn from that, and it's a good culture, and it's been around a while. It's developed. It's kind of matured in its own way, and
like I was one of the youngest people here this weekend, probably.
Yeah,
there's a few kids I think scattered around.
Yeah, there's definitely some.
Yeah, the average age of person that probably attends Dragon Con is a bit older. I mean, it's mostly a book medium here. Like you got some trailers and whatnot for some. I mean, Night Flyers had the trailer. I didn't get to check that out, but mostly a book medium.
Yeah, they do. Like the Hugos is a big part of Worldcon, and there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of authors, a lot of really talented authors, and a lot of both people who are established, people who are getting going, people who are doing different things, people who are working on. There was panels on diversity. There's panels on world building. There's panels on evolution and how to fit that into sci-fi. There's a lot of just really cool, nerdy topics that you would never even thought of on your own necessarily, but once you hear it, you're like, oh, that's cool. But there's not enough time to go to all of them either, so you kind of have to make some tough decisions on which of these cool things to go to and which to miss out on. And then you get the dealer's room and all the art and everything, and
me and you, we went to John Picasso panels, and they were both fantastic. The first one was really interesting because we got to hear a story from a Mariana Palova. She's from Mexico, and these people were talking about their experiences following their passion and having to work a full-time job. So being an artist, whether it's visual or being a writer, it is not easy to attain, kind of levels of awesome like George R.R. Martin, per se.
Yeah.
So that was kind of one of the interesting things I pulled from that panel.
I mean, you're right. All four of the people on that panel, not counting John Picasso himself, had like basically a full-time creative schedule and a full-time job that was in creation. They're employed as creators, but also working as much on their own creations. And so that was the kind of common theme between them all. They work really hard. They put in a lot of effort. They really love what they're doing. Like they're motivated, they're hardworking, and they really love it. So that's the thing. It's like they're driven, but it's the thing that they're into is what's driving them. It's like kind of a fulfillment. Like they're into it and they do it, and that makes them feel more satisfied, and it keeps looping, and it's really powerful. And it's wonderful to see them and hear them talk about how they do that and how they balance those two things. And it's neat how they all have that in common.
And the thing is too is like when you hear these stories, like we all come from different backgrounds and upbringings, but seeing this, it humbles you because you think of like us as creators, Aziz, like you guys are pretty well established, and I've been working my butt off to try to get to a level where I feel I can be comfortable with what I have.
Yeah.
But like none of these people said that they were comfortable or ever safe, and that was kind of one of the most beautiful things that you can take away from that they're willing to make that sacrifice to try to achieve something that they want to see, whether it's a book or a piece of art.
Yeah, you're right. It really shows how dedicated they are, because that's true that a lot of them were kind of putting themselves out there, not just in terms of being judged, but in terms of it might not make money. Some of these projects that are their passion projects might not make them money, or might not make them a lot of money. And like you said, I think when you were asking me before about things that were really inspiring, and I think you mentioned this before, maybe not today, but in the past, just talking about how George had his multiple crashes, and then like when George R. Martin's career crashed twice. Like if he can, his career can crash, and that just tells you that you should never give up.
I mean, this goes back to the sentiment. Like, look at Ashton Kutcher was a janitor. Oprah, she was like rejected from her first 5 jobs. Michael Jordan was kicked off his basketball team, high school. Like, so
there's all kinds of stories like that. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And it was cool that like they talked about their schedules too, and how they stay organized, or what kind of financially what it takes to try to pull something off like this. Because like I said, it's what did he say? Time boxing. She said
time boxing.
She's like, Grace Fong said, I have to time box.
Yeah,
and like
really disciplined. Yeah, that's hard to do. That kind of discipline is that's something that you have to practice. It's not just something that you're born with. You practice discipline just as much as you practice your craft.
So yeah, I mean that was, I mean, and then John again, like I said earlier, John kind of asked the hard questions. He put in 1 or 2 questions that kind of made them feel uncomfortable, but all the answers were so expressive and so emotional that it was really worthwhile that he kind of went that angle.
Yeah, and you mentioned that one Mariana Palova, that was her name.
Yeah, Mariana Palova.
She's Mexican writer, and she pointed out, and like you said, this is another example of something inspiring. She pointed out that just we here in the U.S. and maybe Canada and some other places, don't necessarily realize that there's just so many less opportunities in certain countries for being a creator. Like she said that her situation's harder in that sense, and it's like, as soon as she mentioned it, it's like, oh yeah,
the average Mexican reads 0 books a year. Like the average, like I don't know what it is for Canadian. It could be 3 or 4, or the average American could be 2, whatever. But the average Mexican, like for the demographic that she's trying to hit, it's literally 0 books. Like nobody reads.
So they just don't have the market for it. It's unfortunate, and that's just, so she has to try to reach her audience in different ways and to do different
social
things.
media. They said
yes, because more people, Twitter and places like that are pretty accessible, almost no matter what your income level is, almost, but those are easier. So that's really, it just shows us how many ways that this industry works and the way different people are making it work for them, and how many different ways there are to do that. And that's pretty inspiring, just to show that there's so many options and so many ways to be successful, but also that you have to work hard at it.
And that's kind of the same vein in what George was talking about, the crashing and burning. We didn't hear the crashing and burning to an extent with this panel,
no.
But they definitely spoke about the lows and the highs.
And they all talked about how many hours they put in. It was really, wow, these guys work hard.
Like they work like full like 50, 60-hour jobs, and then on their own time they have to create, which is so, I mean, we are so fortunate with the schedules that we have. What was another thing from, at least from Tuesday, like I keep on saying this, but George was in the really good energy that he was giving off.
I've been in the fandom a long time, since 2001-ish. So I went through the wait for Feast, I went through the wait for Dance, and of course we've all gone through the wait for the Winds of Winter. So I've learned to take any news about books coming out or anything like that. I'm always just, I don't believe it. If George says the book's coming out, that's the only thing that's going to do it for me. But the fact that George loves conventions, and this is something he's been doing since the 70s, since before he was famous, and you're right, he's in a really good mood. He was happy, he was smiling, he was joking with people. A couple people tried to we're a little, there's always a couple trolls, but George is able to, it didn't slow him down. He got through it. He just does his things like, okay, I'll take this picture with you, dude. Even though you interrupted me, that kind of thing, where he's just like, lets it roll off of him. And hey, maybe either it could be, I don't want to say that this means he's like almost done with the book, that this mood means that, because that's just too much of a stretch. But it does mean he's not feeling too bad, and this con is going to be refreshing for him. He's going to
add more cons to his schedule.
Yeah, and he did add more cons to his schedule next year, which gives him that. At least he's confident, that he'll be done soon. But he's been confident before, so I don't know. We'll see. But
the counterpoint we were actually talking about last night, Aziz, was, when you're working from home and you're there for an extended period of time, you get locked into kind of this zone. But stepping out to go to conventions, like I said, the con culture, the energy you get from that, you get reinvigorated to go on a trip. Well, of course, we're coming to California. It's beautiful. There's all these fun things that you're doing. The fact that George has added 3 more conventions or 2 more conventions, that alone, for him to have to make that effort to go there and be submerged, like he's going to have to interact with people, right? So for him to be able to do that, it may seem like, oh, he's taking time out of his schedule, but it's actually a really good thing, I think.
Everybody needs to get fresh every once in a while. And of course, like you said, George, he always goes to Worldcon. That's like, he's locked into that. He's been going for who knows how long. I could have looked that up, but a long time. But like you said, he had said he's not going to do any other cons except for ones he's committed to, and if he's added a couple that he's not committed to. I don't want to read into that too much, but it'd be also, we should mention it, and it might mean something.
Well, I think one thing that we do have to do is thank the Brotherhood Without Banners.
Oh yes, thank you very much, BWB. Shout out to them. The original, the oldest fan group in all of A Song of Ice and Fire fandom. They've existed since 1996 or 97-ish. They used to, the way the group was formed, it was back in the day that George wasn't that famous, and they were able to just approach him at cons. You could just walk right up to him back in the day and just say, "Hey, George." He didn't have people all around him. He wasn't someone that you would have to wait in line for hours to get a signature from. He was just a well-known author, we'll say. Like in authorial circles, he was very well known, very popular, won a lot of awards, but he wasn't, he wasn't on HBO or anything like that. So big difference. So back then, he would actually hand out like quests to the people in the BWB, like tell them, you have to go get me a cheesesteak. If they were in Philadelphia, they bring me the best cheesesteak in Philadelphia, he'd say. And if they're in Kansas City, he'd say, bring me burnt ends, which is a barbecue thing that they make there. So, and he would knight them. He would actually like hold out a little fake sword and give them a title. Like we were at a party the other day where we met a guy whose nickname is Braun, is actually part of his name. And he's the guy that had the R+L=J, a license plate that I posted on Instagram. I know a few of you saw that. And he got it signed. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, damn.
He got it signed. Yeah, he got it signed today. So his license plate is signed. Yeah, so he's the Knight of the Cellars, because he did like a wine thing for George once, and George dubbed him Knight of the Cellars. So that's right, LML, I'm wearing your shirt. But that's the origin.
San Rixian represent. I wore this.
That's right.
And you wore this to go see George earlier.
That's right.
And I wore this.
That's right.
So San Rixian and David were representing for you. I know San Rixian was pretty happy, and
yeah, for real. We
got to do some marketing for our community peeps.
Damn right. Yeah. So George was saying. So he was really. What were we talking about? Yeah, the signatures. Oh yeah. So that's the oldest group, and George is, first name basis, text with several of these original BWBers. And so they've carried on the tradition. Every year at Worldcon, they induct new members. The knightings they don't do the knightings anymore because they're just, now George now is too famous for that. But he does still come to the parties, as you just saw, as you explained, as you have, your photo of, the blurry photo I took.
I put the blurry photo, actually, this is Aziz. I put the blurry photo up on Patreon yesterday. I wasn't sure if I was going to actually release it on Instagram, because
it's kind of an awkward photo.
I'm blurry and George is hugging a girl in the back.
Yeah, I did not mean to grab the photo. I'm like, oh, what did I just do?
But I tried to troll Aziz on Patreon, and everybody's like, no, Aziz is awesome for getting George in the picture. So
anyway, so that was really cool. So what they did for us is we had to get inducted into the BWB, to join this hallowed, original OG fandom group for A Song of Ice and Fire. We had to do a shot. And
there was Ghost Chilean vodka.
Ghost Chilean vodka.
It was really hot.
It burned. It wasn't just what do they say?
It was a singeing of the throat.
Yeah, it wasn't a dunk in some salt water. It was like they say that the weak form of drowning in the Yarnals is a real.
It kind of coated your throat. Yeah.
Yeah, and LML and Elodia were there, and Ashea as well,
and George and Angie.
George and Angie. That's right. Our crew was there, and that was they're all BWB now. That's right.
It stings the nostrils.
It does, yeah. It took about 25 minutes for that sting to fade.
So this is an interesting question, Aziz. I guess we can get into this. The Dark Sister, this is James. I always can't read the Welsh and what's going on there.
Oh, yeah, that's a hard name.
But his name is James. He says, Kyle, as you kindly advised from George himself, Dark Sister was taking, and by the way, that wasn't me. That was actually Aziz's girlfriend, Ashea, but we were all there reporting. Ashea was the first one to put that out. But Dark Sister was taken up to the north by Bloodraven. Will Danny get this sword? Some people think that she may get Blackfire. We don't know what's going on with that. Dark Sister, I'm tending to be more towards, I think, what you're going to say, Aziz, possibly with Arya.
Yeah, I think it's possible that Danny could get it, but that just, from a narrative point of view, I just don't, I could see I could see from a logical point of view, like in world, like she could claim it belongs to her family. But from a story point of view, I don't see it at all, because it just, if she inherited it, what's she going to do with it? She doesn't know how to fight. She's never trained. I don't know. I mean, maybe she could. I just kind of doubt it, though. She's going to be on her dragon, and that's going to be her thing. I feel like Arya, Mira, or someone else is someone who's actually going to fight with it. Seems more likely.
I think people are trying to skew it in the way that it's going to be Visenya and Aegon the Conqueror, and trying to draw the parallels to that, and that's why they think Daenerys is going to get the sword. Yeah. I think that's most of the reasoning why they're thinking that.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Visenya, but that's the thing. Yeah, Visenya was actually a really good fighter.
And Dany is more like Aegon than Jon, anyways.
Yeah, it's true. So I guess I wouldn't be surprised if it went that way. But I'm going to guess. No, I'm going to guess it goes to Arya, Mira, maybe both.
Yeah, and Mira too. I mean, obviously she was in the same. I mean, she's going to be in. I mean, in Winds Winter, she's going to be with Bran, and the door moment, she's going to be super integral to Bran getting out of that cave. So
I would think so.
she's going to be maybe scooping something up there.
Yeah.
Some people suggested that happened in the show. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be included, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be included in the show. I think Arya's Valyrian steel dagger is kind of the equivalent.
Yes.
You know, the one that the one they used something that had already been used in the show. They were like recycled it, conserved the. It's an already a known item.
Yeah, because Littlefinger uses it. They can associate it.
Yeah.
Kind of like how they changed the name to Yara instead of keeping it on the ocean.
Right, exactly. Yeah, to not confuse people. So I don't know. I think that seems more likely to me, but I would love to be surprised. It's always fun to be surprised, so we'll have to just wait and see.
And we got Urtach Altanas in the chat. Urtach, welcome.
Urtach, good to see you, buddy.
Disputed Lands. We also got LML on the chat, who we got to hang out with, I think 3 times. I mean, I thought we were only going to get to see David once, and that was awesome.
Yes. Lots of LML FaceTime. That was excellent.
So I won't keep you for the whole thing, Zeus, but what's one more thing that you think from the night on Tuesday? For me, when he mentioned, like, we're not going to see the continued stories of Arya, Jon, and Tyrion, was kind of like,
I was kind of telling, yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that was interesting. It was a good. Okay, so let's just to be clear, let's back up and make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. Yeah. Okay, so someone asked about the general conversation was about more stories in Westeros after Game of Thrones, and he mentioned that, by the way, all of these proposed spin-offs are prequels rather, no sequels. So he said, in other words, you won't see the continuing adventures of Tyrion or Arya or Jon. And those were the ones he named?
Yep, the 3.
Tyrion, Arya, and Jon. Okay, so is that an implication that there could be continuing adventures of Tyrion, Arya, and Jon, right? Does that mean that they survive? It's kind of hard to think that George would just give that away like that, but maybe he did it kind of by accident. Maybe he just pulled 3 names out of his butt. But I think he knows which of those 3 are going to survive or not. Like, he's already decided for the most part. So he might have accidentally dropped a little hint there.
Well, I mean, when people associate, like, with favorite characters, you got to think that, as far as how many chapters those characters have, they're up there in the top. I think they're all in the top 5.
They are, yeah.
And then, Daenerys, and I can't remember who else might be in the top 5, but that Jaime's up there. So those people are supremely important to what's going to be going on in the end game of the story anyways.
Absolutely.
It's just the way he answered it. It seemed like he's like, oh, those 3 characters he just like rolled off the top of his head, and those were the first 3. And I think that is significant because of the energy he had. And I'm not saying that those 3 characters, Jon could die, absolutely, Arya could die. But just the general sense of it was kind of just a gut feeling. The way he answered it was very quick, but because he answered it so quick like that, it seemed he was very confident in what he was saying.
And we know that Tyrion is one of his favorites. And, Jon's kind of hard, there's some reasons to think he would die, some reasons to think he might live. With Arya, it's interesting because, there's the really early foreshadowing in the book that they'll find her with needle frozen in her fingers, right? That's kind of
Jon's thinking that.
Yeah, that's kind of foreshadowing that she'll die. But on the other hand, George's wife's favorite character is Arya, and she said that if she ever killed Arya, that there would be a problem. And George doesn't name his cats after Game of Thrones characters because he doesn't want to have to kill off a character that and associated with the cat that's his pet. So his wife named one of the cats Arya, knowing that about this to try and maybe force the issue.
Damn.
So she's really pushing for Arya to live. So I don't know if anyone has control over George's writing, you'd think it would be, Paris, his wife. But I don't know. Maybe it also kind of implies that she's worried about Arya, that she thinks he's planning on killing her. He's got to, she's got to step up and save her.
People are saying I could pass for a Baratheon because of the beard, and I'm actually I probably could.
I think you're a little more Westerner though. It's a little light color.
Blonde, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're a little more Western.
I'm gonna snag you for one more question, Aziz. Sure. Fire and Blood. George did talk about that. Actually, when he was talking about the prequels, he said that they had gathered a lot of his sideboards, and when he had wrote about it for Fire and Blood for one of the parts of the prequel.
Yeah. So that we did know already that the prequels were what's been lined up. They're all prequels, so it makes sense that they would look at some of the most important or most exciting historical eras. Obviously we heard they weren't going to do Robert's Rebellion, but that leaves a lot of other big things like the Blackfire Rebellions or the Dance with the Dragons. Dance with the Dragons we thought was pretty likely one because you get to have dragon battles.
Oh,
and you get to have all the same houses. You got Greyjoy, you got Lannister, you got Stark, you got Tyrell. All those houses are part of this. So you get to have all the familiar faces, all the familiar sigils, all the familiar battle cries, all the familiar like armor and like shield designs and sword designs and weapons and all that. So that, and then just awesome dragon on dragon stuff. But so I think that one's probably on the list, on that short list, but that doesn't mean it's going to get made. So we'll just have to cross our fingers because that would be badass.
He did say, though, Aziz, that it was his idea to call the next prequel The Long Night, Game of Thrones The Long Night.
He wanted to call it The Long Night, yeah, and that's, he says that's, that's the central thing it's about, which is awesome. So, it makes you think, what other sides of The Long Night do they want to show us from there? We're going to see our version of The Long Night in proper Game of Thrones here next season, right? So what are they going to do with that? Yeah, what are they going to? They're going to. It's kind of like they're going to build on it in reverse. They're showing us this modern Long Night, and then they're going to show us this ancient Long Night, and we're going to have a lot. I mentioned we're going to have a blast, just like comparing them and going back and forth on that.
Well, one thing that we also talked about in the line this morning, we got there a little bit early for the signing. I mean, these things get. I mean, there's quite a few things to go. You want to make sure that you're getting your thing signed. Is actually the fandom going in together, kind of. I don't want to say blind, because some people do know quite a bit about this history period, but going in the sense that we don't really know what happened during this period.
Right. We don't really know at all. Super ancient history. Nothing was written down back then. At best, there's like runes on rocks, like, which you can't exactly tell thorough stories with that, right? You can't give a lot of details with the rock. You don't get to like asterisk. Okay, carve an asterisk and like, okay, actually put that in parentheses, carve that. Yeah, so that's we're gonna probably be disabused of some notions. We're probably gonna. One thing I'm really excited about is, okay, so one of the things we hear about this time period is all these like huge figures that like lived 1,000 years and built 12 castles and fought giant sea dragons. It's all like, what? This is all crazy. But the thing is, most of the stories probably aren't true. There's a seed of truth in there. There's something about that's true, but it's been exaggerated, and it's exaggerated over a period of 4,000 to 6,000 to 8,000 years. So if it gets exaggerated a little more each time over 8,000 years, that's going to be
like
really
banana phone. Like I'm saying,
yes,
it's like I'm saying caramel, and you end up with toffee.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example. I think in America we call that telephone.
Yeah, we call it banana phone because when we were kids, I don't know, it's fun when we were kids.
Anyway, so yeah, it's the same point. So you're right. So I think I'm really excited about seeing that deconstructed, seeing what original seed grew into. Oh, he killed a seed, literally fought and killed a sea dragon, or what seed grew into Brandon the Builder built all these castles. What was the real truth there? Maybe he just helped. Maybe people learned from him. I don't know what it was, but I kind of doubt Brandon the Builder built 12 castles, but he probably did something important with building, and then that turned into the myth, the legend that we know now.
I think what we're seeing with the Song of Ice and Fire too, in Game of Thrones, the TV show, because it's such a different medium the way you experience it, is we're seeing the visualization of these characters that have flaws. Like Jon is going to be a hero, but that's kind of setting up, the prequel, because these people are going to have failures and faults and kind of twinges that we see within them. So we'll kind of already experience that with the Tyrions and the Daenerys and the Jons and the Theons. We know that they're flawed, and I think that is what you're trying to get at, is seeing those people, these legends, have flaws like Land the Clever.
Yeah, they won't be
like a Littlefinger. Right?
Yeah. You're right. They won't be perfect characters. They won't be like these larger than life figures. They might be. They'll do great things. They'll do important things. They'll do amazing things. But they're not going to be. They're going to be flawed and gray, just like the Game of Thrones characters are. They're not going to be just pure good or pure evil. They're going to be interesting. I hope.
One thing that was really encouraging too, Aziz, is the way George actually announced and straight up said that Bran is the hardest character for him to write.
Yeah, which is interesting because it's the first character he wrote. It's the first scene he ever imagined was the execution scene with Garrett, with Garrett. It's Will in the show, Garrett in the books getting executed. That's the first scene he ever imagined, and he thought it was just going to be a little short story. And of course, it grew into this. No longer a short story. But isn't that interesting that the toughest one is the one he started with?
And he also said specifically, because someone asked a question about, obviously George has written many sci-fi stories.
Mm-hmm.
So what was really interesting is he talked about magic and how important it is to keep magic more on the realer side of the spectrum, because if you do try to complicate things, like for example with time loops and all of these different magics that might not the normal average person can't comprehend, then you're ruining the story. And that was something that was, I think, actually very positive for us, because I know if you have a similar sentiment on the time loop ending for Game of Thrones, I'm not really down for George to kind of just be like, it's a dream, whatever, we're in some sort of closed loop.
Thank you, yeah. I think he's going to give us something pretty big, some sort of, but not complete. You know, like he won't give us all the answers. He's set it up that way. That's why the POV style exists. That's why the World of Ice and Fire book is written by a maester and not by some, know-it-all like creator. You know? So that's the story we're in. He's trying to put us in the world, not be a story that an omniscient narrator could tell us. So yeah, and that's, you're right. He accomplishes that with that mystery, and the magic really helps that, because magic shouldn't be explained. Personally, I think it's better that way. I'm fine when it is explained. I love things like Mistborn, where the magic system is like laid out like perfectly and noted and detailed, and it's like there's not a lot of mystery to it. That's cool, but I like the mystery a little more, I think.
And that's why we are actually, Ashaya had, like, we were having a conversation. Ashaya had mentioned that she actually liked that Rhaegar had been done previously, like he's the perfect Prince Charming, but he's 20 years dead. So it's like George is giving you this like perfect character, but it's like he's changing it in a way that's, you've got your Prince Charming, but he's dead. The promised one.
He was a little crazy for prophecy or something. We still don't have that.
And
full
he spoke
story.
about that too.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, about the whole idea of taking it too literally, or of it leading you astray, or of from different part, like either being led astray intentionally by somebody, or just by misinterpreting it yourself. Like something Melisandre does. So yeah, it's a lot of ways that goes. George really likes to play with that. And one thing I love to say is that, George has his reputation as breaking tropes, and he does, but he doesn't break them all, because if he broke them all, that would be predictable too, right? He's got to keep some of them kind of in place to what we're used to, or else that becomes a pattern in and of itself.
Like deconstructing the hero's journey, for example. Like someone did ask the question, like, "Hey, is the hero's journey an influence in your story?" He didn't. It's obvious that it is. So that's But like in relation to what Aziz just said, it's like he's kind of taking things out, matching certain things together. And he's actually spoke about that, like historical characters. That, he basically said, like, hey, like I have these characters and I'll pull from one part of history and another. And it's not going to be, because someone asked if it was like exact, like, one character was inspired after one person. And George said, no, there are multiple people that have their personalities within an Arya or Jon.
That's really cool, because it shows that he's influenced. He knows where to pick good ideas from, but he doesn't just straight rip them. He just, even when he's ripping from himself, even when he recycles his own ideas, he changes them. He just uses the seed and grows it from there. He's like, okay, this was kind of cool, but let's add this and give it some more depth, and twist it and turn it and give it a family and do all these other stuff, and then put a world around it. So sometimes we point to these cool parallels between his old short stories and now, and it's like, oh, it's the same. It's like, well, no, it's not. You can definitely recognize the similarities, but it's still
you've
new
been reading
and fresh.
Dream Songs?
Yeah, I've been going through Dream Songs Volume 1, and that's super fun, because it's like each little short story is a different set of maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little nuggets that you recognize from A Song of Ice and Fire. Just for example,
like R'hllor.
R'hllor, yeah. He just talks about some of the first fantasy characters he ever wrote. These are some stuff that he wrote like high school and early college, stuff that never was published. He had his first character was R'hllor of Raug and Argilac the Arrogant. That's, the Storm King that Aegon the Conqueror defeated when he conquered Westeros. And then he mentions that R'hllor's grandfather was King Barristan the Bold. Like, what? So, it's like, but obviously this isn't the same Barristan. It's just the name, right? And I happen to notice, by the way, so R'hllor's grandfather is Sir Barristan the Bold. What is Barristan's nickname in Slaver's Bay? Sir Grandfather? Okay. I don't know. Might be the same thing, might not. Might be just reading into that, but I thought it was cool. So, so each little tidbit, the stories are super fun, because you find those tidbits, and it's like you see the seed that George grew the giant plant out of. We know the giant plant now, because that's A Song of Ice and Fire is the giant plant. It's the giant garden he's been tending for years. But those were where the little seeds came from.
I think Cthulhu came up in Lovecraft.
Yes.
I asked a question about homage, but he kind of talked more about the Armageddon dragon, the failure with that.
Yeah.
But he was like pretty enthusiastic about people writing stories inspired by his works only if the story was good. But there was some kind of subjects that George was talking about, like the homage, the different stories and characters that he's been influenced by, and kind of how he's incorporated them within. A Song of Ice and Fire. I mean, a lot of the questions were about Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, it's true. People mostly wanted to know about that. People had a few wild cards questions and process questions and a few personal questions. And he likes answering them all. He doesn't get tired of the Song of Ice and Fire questions. I think he likes it a little extra when someone asks about something obscure. Because, as an artist, when someone asks about your least liked thing, it's like, ooh, yeah, that one needed a little more love. But most of George's stuff is under the microscope because he's so famous in general. But still, he gets a kick out of somebody bringing up like one of his really early stories that's not talked about nearly as much as Game of Thrones or now Night Flyers is going to be talked about a lot, and these other things.
But yeah, I think overall, I mean, the sentiment from Tuesday night is that George was having fun.
Yeah,
that was really positive.
That is really.
It was really nice to see him have that kind of positive energy, and I think I'm not saying that I think that Wins is going to come out this time, but I think it's going to be fairly close to season 8. I don't think we're going to have to wait like another 2 years or something. I think it's coming out in 2019 for sure.
I feel pretty good about that. I like to keep my expectations really low. Nonetheless, I feel pretty good about that.
Well, this was Aziz from History of Westeros, a nice little treat we had on the stream today. Thanks, Aziz, for joining. And I thought it would be awesome if we kind of had a conversation, not just me talking about what George talked about, but getting Aziz's insights and kind of going back and forth on what George had to talk about.
Well, thanks for having me. Let me show everybody my cool bag.
Yeah, Aziz is going to show something that he got autographed by George R. R. Martin. So
check it out, folks. The laptop case right here. Got the Baratheon and Lannister sigils signed by George right on the front. So, yeah, I'll be treasuring that for a while.
But Aziz from History of Westeros, everyone. Thanks for sharing the link in the live chat, JR Rowley. If you guys do want to check out their channel, you can find their podcast on iTunes. I'll also put in the description of this video at History of Westeros on YouTube. They also do Twitter. I'll make sure all that's in the description so you guys can go check them out. Aziz and Asheo. All right. So what we'll do is we'll kind of get into a question period. We got about 42 minutes here. I'm going to let you guys get some questions in the chat while I actually go grab another beer, actually go pee, and then we'll start with the questionnaire period. Aziz can talk to you guys while I go for a pee.
Now I am Kyle. And what can you do about it? Nothing. I see. This is how you know I'm Kyle, because I'm drinking Canada Dry. And this slowly turns you Canadian. And that's why I'm drinking it. It's true. I see a lot of chatters here. I see a lot of people whose names I recognize, and a lot of friends. This is a great community. We all know each other so well. Amy Collins Russell says that I'm Aziz, and I don't know how. You don't have any proof of that. None at all. Yep, that's right. No, Attila Angel says, thanks, Aziz. No, my name is Kyle. No, see, I'm Kyle. No. Mama Ogre says, how are you, Aziz? I'm Kyle. I'm not Aziz. So I can't answer how Aziz is. I don't know how Aziz is right now. I only know how Kyle is. So what's going on? I can only keep this up for so long.
What, you trying to be Kyle?
Yeah. I'm just not cool. Do you want to drink?
Yeah, no, definitely. Aziz is a faceless man. Okay. He's wearing Aziz's favorite. Okay. It's strange having Aziz on live stream without his cats bothering him. Thank you. And Aziz wants to become Canadian, enjoys Kyle too much. Okay, that's an interesting one. Kyle is wearing Aziz's face. Aziz is wearing Kyle's face. Oh, wow. He's glamoring himself into Aziz that is known. Charlie Marino says, Kyle, did George didn't mention anything about Viserion? He did not. But, he talked about a little bit about prophecy and whatnot. And I don't think he exactly said dragon dreams or anything like that. But, yeah, we actually have George, who just walked in the door. I'm going to ambush George to try to get on the stream here. We had Aziz on, but we haven't had a chance to get George's opinion of Worldcon and George R. R. Martin being in town. George, you want to come on for a little bit? All right. So everyone, George Sartiano, old Jeezy, young. We'll call him Young Jeezy for today. He's looking spry. All right. So yeah, me and Aziz were just talking about obviously some of the things that we're talking about with George R. R. Martin, Dark Sister, George having a positive energy on Tuesday night. What were some of the things that you took away, George, from Tuesday?
Well, he's got so much on his plate right now, and it's clear that he's trying to work through and get the new books out, but he's also got 2 television shows.
Yeah.
Above and beyond Game of Thrones, the prequel show, and then also Night Flyers. He's got the other books coming out, the Dunkin' Egg one.
Fire and Blood, yeah.
Yeah. And Wild Cards just came out. So he's got a lot on his plate, and it's like the man's a genius when it comes to writing and doing this, but it's like he's almost just taken on too much, and I don't think he ever planned it. But man, I would love and hate to be in his position at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would love to have those like first world problems of, oh man, I have too much stuff.
I have too many projects on the go, which are all successful and all really like. Damn.
Sucks to be me.
Sucks to be me with those dump low. And he did talk about. He did talk about the money. He was pretty savage about that.
Oh yeah, no, that's what was funny was a couple times he's like, someone said something about being a writer or being this. He's like, well, unless you're successful.
And you have a good story.
Yeah, and it was just funny because he also was going on about how some of these projects really almost shouldn't exist, like Night Flyers. He was pretty frank about saying, yeah, there's no reason this should be a TV show. It was a novella. It was over and done. And if you've ever seen the first movie, I'll get to that in a moment. If you have ever seen the first movie, it's a horror movie. It's a haunted house in space movie, and he was saying that some critic or something
the genre
had that you couldn't mix science fiction and horror, which kind of made me funny because in a moment he comes back and he references John W. Campbell, who, as we know, wrote Who Goes There, which is the short story that the movies The Thing were based on.
That's right.
And if that's not horror and science fiction mixed together, I don't know what it is.
For sure, 100%.
So and very successfully, I still think The Thing is one of my favorite movies and certainly one of my favorite horror movies. And right around the same time, Alien had also come out, which is another mix of science fiction and horror.
I think we can classify Alien as science fiction horror. I mean, there's a lot of scary things that are happening. Yeah.
I still think it's the scariest movie I've seen outside of maybe The Exorcist or something like that. So he has all that going on. Night Flyers is now being turned into a TV series. And he was like, I don't even know why, but when someone pulls up to your house with a dump truck full of money, you just take it.
And it's like, oh, 1 million. No, I want creative control. 2 million. I want creative control. 4 million. Okay.
All right, fine.
I'll take your 4 million.
I'll take your $4 million. Okay, so I almost misread Scott McCloy's question. It said, what did he say about D&D? And I immediately thought Dungeons and Dragons because for 40 years that's been my reference to what
George is using the Dungeons and Dragons.
And I was actually going to say he did talk about Dungeons and Dragons and playing role-playing games.
Yeah.
So I thought that the question was about that. So apparently, like, he's had a pretty regular role-playing game session with like himself and Melinda Snodgrass and another author, Walter John Williams, who's one of my favorite science fiction authors. And they've been playing for years, and the whole Wild Card series, as you might know, it grew out of
a game,
a campaign that they developed for superheroes. They were like, well, why don't we try a superhero one out? And I'm like, okay, so
D&D backdrop, esque,
right? So Wild Cards became they were finally like, well, maybe we should write this. This is pretty cool. so the whole thing for Wild Cards grew out of a role playing game of theirs. But he also had a really specific comment about Dan and Dave, and that was that from day one, he'd had a great conversation with them about where the show was going to go.
The end game as well.
And he was he was pretty explicit in saying that the end of both will probably be the same, but they might take differing paths to get there. And he's like, yeah, I'm aware that like certain characters have died off. They probably might not die off in the book. Certain characters have lived. They might die in the.
But
go ahead.
But he said, he was like, listen, I've told them to do a lot of the things you're seeing in the show. So a lot, like, some of these moments that we're thinking that might not happen, they might happen, and people might be surprised by it.
Well, not just that, but I think, he's an executive producer on the show, obviously, and he's worked on tons of movies and television shows in the past. He worked his way up through television from being like a bottom level writer to eventually becoming an executive producer. And he's aware that there's differences between television and movies and literature. So to make the jump or to make a story work, sometimes you have to do something that is different from one or the other. And the example he used was the one from Gone with the Wind, of how many children does Scarlett O'Hara have? And in the books, it's 3. On the movie, it's 1. And it doesn't change the ultimate outcome of the story. It doesn't really change anything about it, but it's a significant difference. And that's what he likened what's going on. He's like, I have no problem with anything they're doing. They discuss it with me. We know, like, we're working together like this.
People think they've only met 4 times. They've met 100 times.
They meet all the time.
Yeah.
They're on the phone constantly. From what my
the level of communication that people are actually understanding what's going on, it's far, far, far more than we think.
Yeah. He's had his hand in what's going on, and when you start a show like that, you create what's called like a Bible for the show. It's usually a book like this big that has the character backgrounds for everybody, what's going on in each city, all that sort of stuff. And he was instrumental in the creation of that. And part of that Bible was, it's going to end here. They all know where it's going to end. And he said that Dan and Dave had to make some decisions that weren't necessarily the one he would make, but it's still going to get the show to the same place that it would have gone if it had just strictly followed what was in his book.
I think he spoke about, did he say 10 seasons? He might have said.
Yeah, I think he originally
10 is what he wanted, I think.
But they only got the 8, and that means that there had to be shortcuts. I mean, but thank goodness they aren't doing what they did with The Hobbit, which was turn a 1 movie book into a 3. That was just a mess.
We got a donation from Maura Lee. Thank you so much, Maura. Really appreciate your generosity. Aziz, this is actually a great question for you.
Yeah, you want to jump in?
And no, it's cool. He can still answer it if you like. The Shrouded Lord chapter that was mentioned. Can we talk a little bit about that, Tyrion? Any new info that was brought to the table? Not really.
No, the Shrouded Lord chapter has been mentioned, years ago, and he loves it. He's really happy with it. He wishes he could have included it, and he does say it would probably be released one day when the series is over, like maybe not his words, but I imagine it's like a deleted scene type. The equivalent of a deleted scene.
He did speak about that though.
Yeah. Probably published some collection.
Yeah, he said it's an alternate pathway, like an alternate part of the world, like Earth 616 versus 625 or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, he loved it. He tried to find ways of taking each piece of it and fitting it in somewhere else in the story. And after a while, he said, I'm just trying to bend this story way too much around this content I love. And unfortunately, this is one of the things he's able to do that the other writers haven't, is kill off your darlings. And that's one of the things that he did here, was take something he clearly liked. It's probably really, really good stuff, but he just had to say it doesn't fit. And
And he's a smart guy. He understands that it's not. Like, some things need to be cut. Some things aren't going to be included.
Yeah, I think this really plays into that whole idea of what we were just talking about, about where's the story going to end. And he's like, kind of like those decisions Dan and Dave had to make, that had to be cut because it just didn't fit into the storytelling the right way. And
for the TV media.
Yeah, and one thing that he even talked about this some too is something I've mentioned on your show before, which is that production considerations, literally what the production can do, often changes what ends up on screen. Like if they're going to film somewhere or need a character or something, but that character can't fly out for that week, or it's just the cost is going to be too much. Or like with Ghost, why haven't we seen him recently? Well, it doesn't. I know a lot of you love Ghost. Don't think I'm
hard to work with that dog.
But to get the dog in the right places and to make sure that you're working with the ASPCA and all the other foundations that you have to work with, and then CGI it up to the right size so it fits in appropriately. People love him, but does it change the story that you haven't seen him on screen? You know he's somewhere like in another room or whatever, but it's still the same story. Ultimately, John will get to the same place whether or not we see Ghost the whole time.
Yeah.
Certain characters have taken lines or storylines from the book that were other people. Yeah. You know, like what's his name? Gendry is an amalgamation of Edric Storm and Gendry and a couple other characters. So he, you know, but we don't need all three of them to make this story work. Yeah. Gendry makes it work. And then, you know, I think the comment he made about the one disappointment that was cut was the whole Aegon storyline. Yeah. And that's when he said, you know, that would have, if this had been a 10-year series, it would have been in there. But it's an 8-year series, and it just didn't fit.
And that's okay though. Like,
well, and he's ultimately, you know, he in that sideways way, he literally just told us it's a red herring because it's not going to change how the book would have ended anyway.
And then he went on to say, if you enjoy the show, you enjoy the show. If you enjoy the book, you enjoy the book. If you enjoy the video game, enjoy the video game. If you enjoy the board game, enjoy that. Yeah. And he kind of
like, enjoy them all. It's like if you like pizza, you can go to your local pizza shop and like Pizza Hut. And if you like both, awesome. Go enjoy both. Don't not enjoy it.
And then George was like, listen, like my universe is getting absorbed by so many different mediums. That's cool with me. I love that.
Yeah, he's like enjoy all of it. Don't just discount something or whatever. He's like, they are different entities. Look at them as different entities. Don't look at them as if they were monolithic. It's it's all under one umbrella, but essentially what he was saying to us during that talk was the movie or the series and the books, they're the same but different. Don't judge one as the other. Only judge it as what it is. Keep in mind that the book is the book. Talk about the book. Discuss the book. Love the book. The series. Talk about it. Love it. And you could say, well, I think this worked better in one or the
absolutely.
Other. And he was the first one to say, I encourage that commentary. Have it, but don't say that this sucks or that sucks because it's not the book. It's the TV show. And don't say the show sucks because it's not the book. It's not the book. It's the show. Watch it for what it is.
That was really cool. And that goes along with, the thing I've been talking about the most is George's positive energy. Like, last night I said I had a very brief conversation with him. I said, hey, George. He goes, hey, this is Kyle. This is your first Worldcon. I said, yep. And he goes, where are you from? I said, Canada. He's like, well, I hope you come back to California. And it's just like he seemed excited to be at Worldcon and because he's been part of cons for. I mean, he was the first ever con attendee.
Yeah, no. Well, not con attender.
Con signee.
No. Because remember, this is the 76th Worldcon, and Con he went to was in, I believe, 1965. But he claims that he's the first official comic book fan because he was the first person to send his money in for the first ever comic book convention,
which had like 25 people.
Which had like 25 people show up. But his con badge, and he said he still has it somewhere, says
001
on it. So he is officially the first comic book fan.
And he's like the alpha, patient zero, the first nerd.
He was like 15 or 16 years old. He said, I put my 250 into an envelope and I sent it and I showed up. And he said, who was it? Steve Ditko, who was one of the co-creators of Spider-Man.
And Doctor Strange was,
He walked in, took a look, said a few things, and left, and apparently has never come back to a convention ever since. So we can blame that on you, George R.R. Martin. That's your fault.
But it was cool to hear him talk about how Stan Lee.
I'm going to grab something real fast.
George is going to come back, everyone. A lot of Stannis chants in the chat for George. George correcting Kyle, real like Stannis, fewer. Yeah, George does that quite often. I get my French-Canadian grammar mixed up with my English grammar quite often, and then you guys correct me, which is fine. Yeah, George is grabbing Lightbringer. I like that one, Rovar. If they are going to do carry the Fagon storyline of the show with John, then yes. Now, I mean, it's just not really a thing at this point. mean, Storm's End is like, we might see it next season a little bit, maybe towards the end of the story. I don't think, I mean, they're going to visit the magical castles. It's going to be a thing. Oh, George is getting what he signed by George R. George is getting what he signed by George.
So he mentioned something, and he said, my first ever thing that got published was a letter to the Fantastic Four.
Number 17.
So as some of you know, I have weird stuff I like to collect. I always like to have like very unique items. So I went and found it on the internet. I found a scan of it, and here it is. So you can look it up yourself. You can find a copy of this scan, but he signed it. So I handed it to his handler, and she looks at it and she's like, "What is this?" Because they were signing for wild cards. And he looks over and I say to her, I'm like, "He'll know what it is." And she's like, So he looks at it and he's like, "Where the hell did you find that?" Which tells me I'm probably the only person who's ever actually gotten him to sign this page. So that's yay me. This is super cool.
Well played.
Well played, George.
George has talked about how he grew up reading comics.
Yeah, and he said, I started out reading, he's old enough that he started out reading like the weird comics and the fantasy comics, the horror comics of the 50s. And he was like, I would just, even when I was 5, 6 years old, I would wanted to read, and that was really my entry into reading and eventually into writing. But as you know, he would go home, and I think he had some pets like turtles, and he would create stories, like fantastic stories, kind of these comic book like stories around his turtles, even as a young kid. So he was like, yeah, I kind of transitioned from the horror comics to superheroes, and it was DC. And then Marvel came out, and I said, no more DC.
Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. Doctor Strange is his favorite, right?
I believe so. So the whole idea that comic books have influenced everything that we're looking at. Think about the size of a comic book universe and the number of characters and everything that's going on, and kind of overlay that on a Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire world. Really what we're looking at is all the individual point of view chapters. Think about it. That's a bunch of different comic books is what it really is. It's like a whole, like all taking place within the Song of Ice and Fire world.
Yeah. It's a great analogy. Yeah. I thought about that before.
Yeah. So what we're doing is like we're reading the trade paperback of the Song of Ice and Fire world comic collection, and it's great that that's done it for him. I mean, it's influenced a lot of his novellas, his earlier work, certainly wild cards we got as a result of his fandom for comic books, and thankfully, like we've also gotten to share that with the other writers around him who he's brought in. And he said that over the last 30 years now, because it's been it's just 30th anniversary of wild cards is this issue. So or we're just past the 30th anniversary, and all the other writers he's brought in, he's like, I only bring you in if you love comic books, or you have to have something really special.
Superheroes.
Yeah. And he's like, people pitch him on it all the time, and
extremely selective, very hard to get.
He's like, even if I offer the door open to let you pitch it, he's like, you have to pitch the character, and it might go back and forth a few times. So he still even has his hand very deeply in all the other stories within Wildcard. So although they might be written by someone else, he's still pretty much, he and Melinda Snodgrass are pretty much in control.
He did mention
of that
Melinda.
World. Yeah, well, she was part of
going forward at least.
Yeah, she's part of the gaming group, and I think she's going to be taking over more of the command role on Wildcards.
Melinda playing Dungeons and Dragons with George. They still play.
They still play every week. There's a group. I think it's the two of them, Walter John Williams. There's another writer.
Old heads of the community.
Yeah, they're all old school. Where does he live? Santa Fe, New Mexico. So they all live there. They all kind of play along. But then look at other things he's created, like Beauty and the Beast. Definitely, fantastic comic book kind of work there. And the success of that show. What's his name? Who's the main actor? Who played the Beast on that? He played Hellboy. He was in
Ron Perlman.
Yeah. Look at all the great stuff that we've gotten from Ron Perlman that Beauty and the Beast really catapulted
Ron
him
into.
into.
Sense of Anarchy.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just great. Thank goodness that he got to play the Beast, and he
was great as Hellboy. Oh my
amazing
goodness.
as Hellboy. Yeah.
it's funny how so many talented people are connected to George, like how many people he's inspired.
Yeah.
1 second, George, I just want to shout out real quick. PJ, thank you for the donation. I got to go to dinner, Kyle. The parting gift for you for your rest of your California trip. Thank you so much, PJ.
Yeah, and so many people are connected to him. He's, either some of his proteges like Melinda Snodgrass or other people who he's given opportunity through wildcards to get up and going. He's very much, one of the things he was saying about going to Worldcon. Worldcon is much more of a literature-based con than some of the other ones that we attend. But it's
the medium of enjoyment is pretty much like 90% books.
Yeah, and he's very much attached to that. He's been going to Worldcon for, I don't know how, 30 years, 40 years, something like that. And he's very much about promoting new writers and making sure that they get known and are getting out there. And that whole idea, at this convention, it's very much a brotherhood.
Carry on tradition.
Yeah. And the parties we've attended, the parties are really about everyone trying to get to know one another. And they're all like, what do you write? Do you do this? What? They want to help each other and support the community, and so Worldcon is really great for that. It's not the
fast go like
the best of a Dragon Con with everyone in costume. I don't want to say it's a business convention, but it's almost sort of like a business convention for writing. It's and it really provides a lot of great opportunity. You'll be on an elevator, you don't know who you're talking to, and it turns out that they're the head editor at Tor or something like that. So it's a really, really good place. It's cool. It's different. It's very much an old school con. It's not like one of these modern.
You know what? One thing I found too, and I think Aziz will agree with me on this one, is like how they accept you into this con. It's like even though these people may seem so rooted in tradition, they're still willing to accept new people all the time.
Oh yeah.
And that is like a very positive thing. Like someone like me, like I don't have the reading capacity of a George or a Aziz. I do love to read, but they're still accepting me. Like they aren't judging me in a way where it's like I'm better than you because I have this knowledge, and there's nothing like that here.
And the crazy thing is even above and beyond that, they're like they all want to share.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you read that? Try this, try that. And they're trying to promote some of their new authors or some of their friends or something. And they're really, when I say friends, like all these people really do know one another. It's a very tight community.
Yes.
Because they all come to this and certain other conventions, and after a couple of years they get to know one another. And like one of our friends, Kelly, the other night was like, no, you have to come out with me. All the writers are over here, and I want to introduce you to everybody I know so that you guys can get to know them.
The networking part of it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this is about. And it's really, a standout part of the Worldcon community is just the
just conventions in general, George. Like I was talking to Aziz about this earlier. Like each convention I go to, it's like even better. Each time we go, we make more friends, and it's like it's this thing that is so infectious because when you're going to a con to enjoy it, like if you haven't been to a convention before, if you have, you understand what it's like to be in a convention, interacting with people. The majority of people, like 90% of people or 95% of people, are there to do the same thing as you, or the same mindset that to get as much of that in one weekend as possible.
Yeah,
and that is something that's truly unique.
One of the things I like is that when you're trying to make new friends, you don't know if you meet someone new, you don't know if you're going to engage with them or not. But like say you're at Con of Thrones. You're or you're at a panel given for wildcards or something. You're already in there with people who are interested in the same thing you are.
Yeah.
So you're over some of those barriers. You may eventually not get along with someone, but some of those doors are already open, and that's really what makes.
By other people as well. Like Axe Chucker was huge for us this weekend. That's one person that we have to thank.
Yeah.
A member of the Brotherhood Without Banners. We're part of the Greenleaf community. Which we're free company of the Greenleaf, which is super cool. The old guard, but that kind of thing.
Yeah, and people are doing all that sort of stuff here. There are a lot of old traditions at this con that we're still finding out about and learning more about. But it's been a lot of fun. There's also
you don't get to do everything you want.
No, you never do, and that's. I'll just say this. That's been one of the funny things that in developing Kyle's con experience has been the first time we went to a con. He's like, oh, here's a list. We're going to do this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like,
scrap that.
I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to do all that. No, just because
you got to learn to go with the flow.
You got to go with the flow. Sometimes you bump into someone in a hallway and it turns out that they're so and so.
You're like a long lost brother, like as far as interests or like
or
you know,
no. They're for a lot of these books, you don't know what the author looks like, and it turns out that you've been talking to one of your favorite authors for the last half hour, and you didn't even realize it. So it's like,
I seen Brandon Sanderson for the first time. I was like, oh, that's him.
Yeah.
Okay, I've totally seen him in like a bunch of interviews.
Yeah,
like,
and it's like, do you want to continue talking to that person, or go see the panel on, I don't know, Canadian superheroes or whatever?
Yeah.
Like you have to, you ultimately have to make choices, and you can have an idea of what you want to do, but don't lock it down for yourself. You know?
And I think organically that happens, and that's just one of the best things, because like I said, most people are there to enjoy the same thing, George. Like that's why me and you get together, because we have so many same interests. Yeah, we have differences and things, but like this one thing is like it's just such a positive and fun thing.
Yeah, and then a lot of these, especially a lot of.
I'm just gonna go to the bathroom real quick.
Yeah,
that you take over.
It's like a lot of panels are some of them are very serious, some of them are less so.
Okay.
And name a Canadian superhero. Go.
Throwing shade at me?
No. I can name a lot, given that I own Alpha Flight 1 through 78. I bought all originally when I was a kid. So I can probably name 20 to 30 members of Alpha Flight if you guys really want to.
Just take over.
So let's see. There's both Vindicator and Guardian, Aurora and North Star, Wolverine, obviously, Purple Girl. Wait.
Alpha Flight is old school.
Yeah,
I can barely remember some of this.
Snowbird, Marina, Puck, Madison Jeffries, Box.
Well, there were a lot of them, huh?
Oh, we're not even out of the first 2 years.
Damn.
So no, there's that's like 12 right off the top of my head. And there were others too. Who else was there? Anyway, let's see. Where's some of the comments? John Byrne was the best X-Men and Fantastic Four. Actually, I think John Byrne's best work was his first run on the She-Hulk. So interestingly, George R. R. Martin officially pronounces Stannis Stannis.
Oh, damn. That triggers me so bad.
And officially pronounces Cersei. So
Kyle Lisi, damn. People are trolling me again. we have another donation here. I think George, we're gonna wrap it up.
I can talk about more Canadian superheroes, and if you really want, I can go down.
Morally, hype and love with the donation. Thank you so much.
I can shift over and talk about the Great Lakes Avengers. Now that's a deep cut if you've never heard of that.
Damn, yeah. I mean, I was
Squirrel Girl, Mr. Immortal.
Squirrel Girl kills Thanos in the comics as well.
She defeats him. She doesn't kill him. And if you know this, all that action she beats Galactus too. It all happens off screen. Which is like, come on, like give us Canadians some props, man. Squirrel Girl. So But number one moment, I think, from Tuesday, and the con for me was George talking about how he crashed and burned twice. Like that happens though, and bear in mind that him saying he crashed and burned, if he's put out 10 books and one was bad, that he didn't crash and burn. He just his trajectory flattened out for a little while, man. Don't. But he's a storyteller. Yeah. He wanted to tell that story a certain way. And he bet on his strengths though, and he did fine. Yeah. The Maple Force. Oh my God, guys! I know I'm not starting the Space Force, but I will start the Maple Force. I will do that. No, interestingly enough, okay. Here's a little fun fact for you. When one of the producers of Logan was talking about the next movie that they were going to be working on, and now with the Disney Universal deal not going through, this is probably canceled. He accidentally said X-Flight, and X-Flight is essentially a mixture of Alpha Flight and X-Men.
Yes.
Alpha. So, and with all the kids from Logan going north, this definitely was on their mind. This was definitely something they were thinking about, was that they would run into X-Flight up in Canada, and that's all those kids were going to become a part of that superhero team. So now that the deal has gone through, that's probably falling through a little bit, but that was something to look forward to.
We're going to do a bigger report on Worldcon. We got some stuff that we got to talk about. We're probably going to have to do a podcast about it, George. But for today, a final overall thought about Worldcon and kind of your experience with George R. Martin on Tuesday. What was like the one thing that you enjoyed the most?
I just like geeking out on his stories, and the thing I liked the most was that I am the first comic book fan. Like he legit can say that. The second thing being just that being able to find that letter. Here, I'll read you all the letter to the comic.
Yeah.
In case.
And to Sack, thank you for the donation.
This is absolutely, you guys are all gonna laugh at this because it's clearly written by like a 15-year-old. Dear Stan and Jack, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. FF number 17 was greater than great. Even now I sit in awe of it, trying to do the impossible, and that is describe it. It was absolutely stupendous, the ultimate utmost. I cannot fathom how you could fit so much action into so few pages. It will live forever as one of the greatest FF comics ever printed, ergo, as one of the greatest of all comics. In what other comic mag could you see things like a hero falling down a manhole, a heroine mistaking a toy inventor for a criminal, and the president of the USA leaving a conference that may determine the fate of the world to put his daughter to bed? The epic story, spectacular and exciting as it is not all that made this mag so great. The letter column was top-notch too. I nearly died when I saw Paul Gambasini's letter. You've really made him change his tune. That letter was a far cry from the one printed in FF number 9. Then there's your cover boast, the world's greatest comic magazine. Brilliant. You were just about the world's worst mag when you started, but you set yourself an ideal, and by gumbo, you achieved it. More than achieved it. In fact, why, if you were only half as good as you are now, you'd still be the world's best mag. George R. Martin. And that's one of the things he said was, he's like, yeah, that's back when I still only had one R in my name. So Stan Lee and Jack Kirby replied, we might as well quit while we're ahead. Thanks for your kind words, George. And now it's time for our favorite department, where we talk to you straight from the shoulder. So that's a little bit of comic fun.
I think that's a cool place to end the stream, because I think we felt some of that positive energy that was within that letter. Yeah, we had a blast.
That was totally fun.
And we got lots more coming for you. Thank you for Aziz, obviously, for joining us.
Yeah.
Aziz from History of Westeros. It's been really fun hanging out and kind of just experiencing this. I mean, we've all been in the same spot. George so graciously let us stay with him in San Jose. Yeah, no Casa de la George. And then we got Aziz just saying Casa de la George, and we got some marvelous stuff on the way. So thank you for all your kind generosity, your donations, for viewing us today. We got some more to report about, but I think today we're going to sign out with hype and love from George. It's been a while since he's done that. So
hype and love, y'all. Hype and love.
Hype and love.